Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Preservation Mindset video series. Today, chapter 3, the third and final chapter in the discussion about building the foundation to preserving your wealth. Now, we've talked about in chapter 1 and 2 the 12 aspects that make up the ideal private reserve and integrating that private reserve into your overall wealth strategy. Today, I want to finish up with talking about the actual vehicles you can use, some of the top players and almost all of the players that are involved with creating and building a private reserve, as well as how many components each of them hit. Now, there is a lot of information that I'm going to cover today, so strap in, get ready, and we are off. I'm going to start with one of the most popular ones, something that most every corporate American has today. It's the 401k plan. 401k is a form or can be leveraged as a form of private reserve. Most people don't because they use it strictly as their retirement plan or their retirement account. But it does have some aspects of the private reserve. So let's jump into them. Let's see them. Tax-deferred growth and tax-deductible contributions, probably the two biggest aspects people contribute to a 401k plan in today's society is because of those two aspects. It's really postponing or deferring the taxation of that money. So ultimately, you're going to get hit with tax. Right now in 2019, it's a really good time to get taxed. So there's less advantageous uses of a 401k right now. There is the additional benefit aspect of a 401k, and that is the employer match. Now, the employer match does usually come with a vesting period. So if you change jobs, if you lose your job, if you want out of the job, whatever it may be, you may miss out on that employee match or that employer match. Excuse me. So again, it's an additional benefit. I wanted to mention it, but it does come with some stipulations. A competitive return, it's not always. It's tied to the stock market, which is outside of your control. But if you have a good money manager, some big conglomerate managing your money, you typically will have either a standard or a competitive return, depending on how you look at and what you view a competitive return to be. So with that, the last thing is it does give you the ability to collateralize it. Almost all of the 401k plans out there do allow you to loan out against that money. Is it always just a borrow against? Sometimes it's a drawdown. Oftentimes it's a drawdown of the account balance. It has to be repaid with post-tax money. If you change jobs or lose a job, that has to be repaid immediately, or you can be hit with a 10% tax penalty on that. There are a lot of stipulations to the collateralization aspect of a 401k that make it less advantageous, especially if you're going to acquire physical property or physical investments that do have tax advantages. It does kind of lower the advantage of owning that property if it is a already tax advantage plan that money is coming from. The money does need to be repaid in 5 years. The loan amount is usually capped at $50,000, and so if you have a lot of money in there, you still only have access to a little bit of it. But hits 5 out of the 12, not too terrible to kick us off, right? Well, let's talk about another one that is really, really used heavily and not necessarily understood fully, and that is the certificate of deposit, or a CD. Very viewed as a safe investment for your money, a safe place to park your money. But let's kind of dive into it. Let's see what kind of aspects that it has. Out of the 12, it hits 4 of them. 4. One of the best is a high deductible contribution, high contributions. You don't really have a limit to how much you can put in. They want you to put more money in, of course. It has a no loss provision, meaning once the money's in there, it's going to grow. Now, that being said, the interest is very poor, oftentimes very poor. You're in the best situation keeping up with inflation or just beating inflation. So your return is very, very limited. Your underlying principal is usually tied up to a fixed time period that's dictated by somebody else. Safe harbor, it is an aspect of it, but it is not 100% of the time, depending on the kind of litigation or depending on the kind of credit attack that's coming after you. If it is divorce, that's not necessarily something that is going to be protected. If it is an auto accident, depending on your state, depending on how CD is structured, that may be up for discussion as well. So it is a component, but it is 50-50, and it depends on how it's structured. But it does allow you collateralization options. But with that, you are still on the negotiation table with a bank. They dictate the rate, they dictate when it gets repaid, they dictate how much you can take out. So there's not 100% liquid, but it is there are collateralization opportunities or options for you, but it's not necessarily completely within your control. So that is the CD, hitting 4 out of the 12. Now, let's talk about a savings account. Most people have these things. Savings accounts are wildly popular, especially now with the high-yielding savings account. Functions like a CD annually, but gives you a lot more liquidity use and control. So let's see how many it's got, and it's hitting 5 out of the 12. Not bad. It's just under half. That's not bad. Liquidity use and control is one of those things. The money is there. The money is available to you. There's oftentimes no loss provisions. Almost all the time there's going to be gain, although that gain is taxable instantly, so that there's no tax deferred growth, there's no tax deductible contributions, there's no tax-free distribution. It's just all kind of a taxable event at all times. But you are going to have growth. But again, the best high-yielding savings account, 2.8, I believe, is one of the highest. I mean, very sometimes it's 3%, 3.2%, and those are varying and typically require a high contribution to get to that rate. But the no-loss provision, it's a key aspect to not lose money once you put it in there, preserving the wealth. Are there collateralization options? That is completely up to the bank, sometimes. And if it is sometimes, it is also going to be a drawdown. So you are still drawing down your account to have access to that money. So it's not necessarily, it would be more advantageous just to take the money out and not owe the bank anything else. There are certain collateralization opportunities, but again, the bank dictates the terms, the bank dictates the rate, the bank dictates approval. All of those things are dependent of things outside of your control. But another key component, high contributions. You can dump a lot of money into these accounts. In fact, they want you to do it. You're not going to earn a lot of money. Everything's going to be taxable, but you do have 5 of the 12 aspects of a private reserve, which makes it on the list of high players. So that was savings account or a money market, depending on which one you want to use. Let's talk about a stock portfolio. A margin account on a stock portfolio. It does have some of the aspects of a private reserve. It's got 5 out of 12. Seems to be a recurring theme here, right? So with this, again, the competitive return aspect. This is dictated on things that are outside of your control. It's tied to the stock market, okay? Your return is not guaranteed by any stretch of the means, but when you have a good quality money manager, typically you're going to get an average to competitive return within these kind of portfolios. High contributions, again, they want your money. They want you to put a bunch of money in there, and you can. You can have access and control to it, which leads into another aspect is it is pretty liquid. Depending on what you're invested in, again, if it's true stock, as long as the market's open, you can kind of wheel and deal, sell and trade, buy, all those things. So there's a lot of control, there's a lot of access, and there's a lot of use of it. Guaranteed loan options and collateralization ability. So you do have options to collateralize. You do have certain guarantees on the money being available. Again, you're not guaranteed the total amount. If the stock market takes a landslide and you have to pay that money back, they're gonna call it and they're gonna want their money back, and that may devastate your portfolio. You may have to find other sources to repay that money. So just know that there are a lot of it's kind of an unsteady collateralized guarantee. So yeah, you can have that loan out, but we're going to dictate the terms and when it comes back, and also we're going to tell you if we need it all back right now. So it's a big piece. It's a big piece of it. It's something to consider, but it does hit 5 of the key aspects. But again, all of these aspects seem to come with some kind of, oh, but wait, it is an aspect, but there is a little bit of, left hand, right hand, not necessarily fully available aspect of it. Now, move on to the next one, a really, really popular one, especially with seasoned investors and very diversified portfolio individuals, and that is home equity. Home equity specifically with a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. Now, what this is when you have built up payments in your house, you own bigger amounts of your property from the bank or whatever institution, and the HELOC is a line of credit against that house. So let's see how many aspects we got. 2. That's surprising. This one's used a lot, especially with real estate investors, but it only has 2 of the 12 aspects. So tax deferred growth, it's a big one. It's a big one. Deferring that tax for down the road. Although, as I mentioned before, it's a really good time to get taxed today, right now, in 2019. It's a good time to get taxed. But there is tax deferred growth opportunity there. Collateralization is available. However, it is not guaranteed. It can be retracted at any point in time. It can be called at any point in time. You are not in control and access to your money. You have spent many years pouring money into your home, and you still have to answer to a bank. Even when you own your home completely outright, all those walls are yours, you still have to go to a financial institution and get approval to how much you can take on your home. And again, if the real estate market goes through a landslide, your home equity goes to a landslide. And so there's no guarantee that the money is going to be in those walls of those homes. So again, 2 out of those 12 aspects. So it's pretty crazy. We're getting into some heavy players here, and the most we've hit is 5 out of the 12. So there's one more I want to talk to you about, and that is a permanent life insurance policy. Let's see how many aspects it hits here. It hits 11 out of the 12. 11 out of the 12. The closest one before this was 5. 11 out of the 12 aspects of building a private reserve is right there in a permanent life insurance policy. Now, that being said, not all insurance companies are created equal. Not all insurance policies are created equal. Not all insurance agents are created equal when it comes to understanding how these should be written for the goal set forth. Not all situations are built the same for what you're trying to do. Is it for vacations and home? Is it for strictly retirement? Is it for diversification of your investment portfolio? Is it to make a real estate play? There's complex inner workings. Is it college planning? So many uses of a private reserve. But when you're using a life insurance policy for that, the way it's structured, the way it's written, and how it's implemented into your overall strategy is crucial. So yes, it does hit 11 out of these 12, but it's not just a willy-nilly, oh, I got all 11, now I can move on. No, it's how you want to use the policy, how you want to use it for your private reserve that dictates how it should be structured and what's in there. So again, going through all of those, the only one it doesn't hit, the only aspect it does not carry is tax deductible contributions. Now, we can have the discussion of some advanced tax strategy moves that we can play that could hit all 12. But again, that's a phone call. Reach out to me if you want to talk about that. But tax deferred growth, tax-free distribution, we have not seen that as an aspect of any of these. Tax-free distribution, guaranteed loan options, and collateralization, but with unstructured loan repayment options. Okay, these are some really good stuff. Liquidity use and control. When it is structured correctly, it functions like a savings account. You can have that money wired to you instantly. Very, very quick turnaround, just like a money market, just like a high-yielding savings account. But you know that the money is there. You know you have access to it. Now, it's not all fluff. It's not all roses and rainbows. Okay, there is a downside. One of the biggest downsides of this is in those first formative years, you're building up your private reserve. And what that means is you don't have instant access to the full amount of your contributions. Now, depending how you structure it, you can make really high contributions into the policy, which allow you access earlier on, but it isn't 100% accessible in those first few years. And again, that's where not all companies, not all policies, not all agents are created equal when it comes to structuring these life insurance policies, all right? But liquidity use and control, once it is established, it is there, and it is going, and it is growing. No loss provisions with a competitive return. Huge, very, very important. No loss with a competitive return, and you have access, you have collateralization abilities, and the tax ramifications are quite impressive. Not to mention the additional benefits. You have the death benefit to protect your family in the event of you going, getting called home. You can, depending on the policy, you can have disability insurance wrapped up in there as well. Accelerated death benefit for medical expenses, different kind of coverages for your spouse, for your children, and the list of riders can be very complex depending on the company that you work with or the company you go through. So, like I said, the wealth preservation mindset comes with establishing the foundational piece, and a big foundation, if not the entire foundation, is the private reserve strategy in creating your private reserve. There's nothing to say you can't have all of these things. Why not have all of these things? It's very great to have all the options. But if you do want to focus on one to accelerate and protect and preserve your wealth, the life insurance policy by far is the best financial vehicle out there to get your wealth preservation mindset in gear, to get your private reserve strategy implemented for whatever life throws at you and for whatever you want to throw at life, okay? So with the preservation mindset, it is about protecting, it is about preserving, and it's also about having the ability to accelerate your money, but not sacrificing those first two components of protecting and preserving. So the information is in front of you. You know the key components. You know some of the biggest financial vehicles out there. I appreciate you listening to all 3 chapters. Again, there's a lot of information, so I encourage you to watch it again. It can be complicated, but that's why we're here. Drive Planning are experts in developing a private reserve strategy, and one private reserve tank can develop into a second, into a third, into a fourth, and so you have multiple private reserves chugging along right with you, preserving each dollar that you have flow through your life. So when you're ready to get started with your foundation, when you're ready to build your private reserve, when you're ready to start preserving and accelerating your wealth, reach out to a Drive Planning consultant today. And again, thank you for listening. I'm Anthony Ornello with Drive Planning. Take care, and we will see you next time.